Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Excited to have you all here today. Um, we really appreciate you guys hopping on. I know we just sent notification of this webinar late last week, so I'm surprised to see so many of you on here, but happy to have you guys on. This isn't a typical webinar that we have, but we did have a big release on Monday, so I thought it would be a good idea to talk about some of the new functionality that you guys may or may not be aware of. I will jump into that here in a second and be mindful of your time today. But I do want to start out by saying that we really take any development requests from our customers really seriously. It can take some time for those items to be put into Finlee or for us to get back to you on whether we're going to move forward with that. But we do make this software for the service bureaus, so we take your feedback really seriously. I know that I work with you guys directly a lot during implementation. So usually during that process, we talk through some things that help inform me in development of what to move forward with. But I do want to say that we take your suggestions very seriously. Kind of the next priorities that we've talked about already on the last webinar is some optimization around Kanban board, and we're going to be doing some cool stuff around like customer list parsing. So in the next couple of months, look out for probably another webinar like this, or in our typical Finlee fundamentals, I'll be talking about a bit of a preview of what's to come there. So again, thanks for joining us. As always, with any release, the release notes, you're going to get an email notification just like you do of these webinar notifications of the fact that there's been a release the morning of the release there, for lack of a better term. But we're not going to have the details of the release in that email. We typically have it in the Help and Support Center. So I just want to direct you towards that. If you go to Help and Support, Finlee documentation, I already had one open. But if you go under Finlee documentation, what's new, we will have details of the release there. So not only do we put the release notes under the what's new section, if there's any corresponding new functionality, we do update the corresponding documentation. So especially for positive balance, which we'll get to here in a second, there is a section under subledger reconciliation detailing out positive balance as well. So this is the first time we're having this nature of webinar, but there are a few things that are really big and new. So I wanted to talk about them, and then one of them in particular you do have to opt into if it is something that you all want to move forward with. It's not for every single service bureau and every single situation there, but we did add a new subledger rec type, so we are excited about that, and that's something that we've been hinting towards for a while now. So I will go through all of these items that we've updated, including like any enhancements of the system, changes and bug fixes, but I do want to make sure to talk about the two main big new functionalities or features within Finlee. So I'm going to first go to a new report that we have. So this was a customer suggestion, and we had thought of a version of it, but we're happy to have this new report, especially for outstanding checks and notification of customers. When I was at a service bureau, doing the notification of achievements or refunds that we're doing of checks could be kind of cumbersome. So we're always happy to utilize the information within Finlee to help you notify your customers or make some processes of your day-to-day operations at a service bureau easier. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the report section, and you all will see in your tenants a new report called outstanding checks. I'll talk a little bit about the difference between outstanding ledger transactions and outstanding checks, but really outstanding checks is the first. If you don't have returns configured or set up, the returns module set up, this is really the first standard customer facing report. So if I'm going to go into outstanding checks, just like any other ledger report, it's going to have the same or similar features of customization, meaning you can filter by certain customers, accounts, status of the accounts as of a certain transaction date there, and then format your columns however you would like there as well. But this report in particular is going to be PDFs that you can download per customer to give them a list of specifically outstanding checks. So this is always going to be default to anything that has a check number or is set to a transaction type of check. So let's say that I'm a service bureau that has trust accounts or employee checks that I issue. And then every 6 months, I do an shipment process of anything that cleared 6 months or hasn't cleared 6 months or prior. If I want to use this report to send the customer a list of the checks that I'm sheeting, that's kind of the purpose of this report. So I'm going to isolate just the trust account on this example customer. And this report here is going to detail any outstanding checks as of the transaction date that is set. You'll see that on each transaction line, we do have an action of a PDF that allows you to directly download that PDF of that customer. So we'll review this report really quickly. So when I download that and then open it, this opens a check detail report that is customer facing. It will say that as of date, which is as of the transaction date, the customer ID and name, if present, is going to be populated here. And then whatever the details of those checks are, we're going to sort by details or group checks by details. So let's say that one employee has 3 outstanding checks. Those would be listed under and grouped by the detail there, the details filled on the ledger transactions or check transaction on the ledger there. It's going to break those out and group those by detail, show you all the list of the outstanding checks as well as the total amount. So this will be 1 page per customer there. If you want to download all of these at the same time, you can hit this export all functionality and then download the PDF. We are telling you, especially if you have a ton of customers that are on trust and you have a lot of individual customers that will get PDFs generated, this may take a while for this to download. So you just have to say, yes, I want to download this. And this is going to send a zip file over to be downloaded there and open. So let me kind of open this on the other screen so I'm not showing too much of something that's not related to all. So this would also show you by customer ID each individual PDF that I decided to export based on a customization of that filter there. So it's our first real, besides again the returns report, customer facing report to help you in the shipment or voiding process. That's also helpful on the tax side, like by tax like tax checks maybe that you're voiding and refunding maybe to the customer. If you guys decide that after a period of time that the agency hasn't deposited it, you're not reattempting, but really just based on your operations, that could be something where you reissue the check to the agency or you refund to the customer there. So this was, like I said, based on a customer request because they have a big shipment process and they wanted help with notifications directly to customers. So this is the new report. The outstanding ledger transactions will still show outstanding checks, and a lot of you use that to group and download in Excel to see what you need to issue or refund. So that's still going to operate as normal. The outstanding checks are just checks. So anything with a check number populated or a transaction type of check paid, that is a PDF that is customer facing. The outstanding ledger transactions are transactions that you can download for CSV kind of across the board of whatever you customize or filter on that report. So that's more kind of an internal, and if you use that as a process to determine what you need to issue and refund and kind of do that all on one with a CSV, then maintain that process. You just have an extra report that can be customer facing. So you consider using that in your operational practices there. So we're excited about that new report there. So I'm going to move on to the next bigger item that we had included in this release, and primarily why I wanted to have this webinar is that we have a new subledger rec item that you will not default see on your side, but you do have to opt into if you believe that it's applicable to your service bureau or tenant within Finlee. So One change that you will see that everyone sees across the board is you may have noticed that negative balance is there, and it was previously named as negative liability. To make it consistent, like the vernacular consistent with positive balance, we've changed negative liability to negative balance. I think that makes more sense in general since it's an overall ledger balance that's in the negative there. And then the positive balance is the new subledger rec item that we added. And if you guys can infer by what I just said, it's any time that customer ledger is in the positive. This by default will never apply to tax because tax, we're just constantly comparing the tax ledger to outstanding liabilities. So it's valid for your customer ledgers to be in the positive. So that's not necessarily an item that we would want to present to you, but positive balances are intended for users who reconcile their direct deposit and trust ledgers to a balance of $0. You can monitor, like you can add the monitoring for either or both of those ledgers. You just need to send that into us. So I recommend it, just as I said, for customers or ledgers, direct deposit or trust are the typical ones where you should be maintaining a $0 balance at all times. So direct deposits are easy in that you typically collect and pay out immediately. So you should not be either in the positive or negative on that balance. Previously, we only reported negative balance there. So anytime that a ledger looked like you were paid out too much or more than you collected, typically on the ledger. But for those types of ledgers where you should be maintaining a $0 balance, it's just as invalid to be holding a positive balance. But that's not always the case. Like if you guys have some commingled funds within your direct deposits or your trust ledger, like let's say within your trust, a bank account that's added there as workers' comp. So you pay out at some different frequency or benefits. So you're holding money for a month and then you pay the following month. It's not necessarily invalid that you have a positive amount on that customer ledger. So you only want to introduce positive balance where it's valid that you're maintaining a $0 balance or should be maintaining a $0 balance at all times for that customer for every bank account under that ledger there. So we can add that to your direct deposit and trust if you guys have those ledgers. And you're maintaining a $0 balance or should be maintaining a $0 balance. The second that you add that or request to add that to your tenant, you'll see a new filtering option up here. And then historically, it will produce everything that is a positive balance for each of those ledgers that you opted into adding that for. Again, there's no use case for adding that to a tax, so we're never going to add that to your tax ledger, but we can discuss that if you don't believe that that's the case. But working with all of you, I believe, I don't see a used case for adding that to the tax ledger. So this is one where you will have to opt in. So if you email support@rakedigital.com and say that you want to add positive balance and what ledgers you want to add them to, then we will go ahead and add those for you. The next time that you load, after we confirm that it's been added, the next time that you load subledger reconciliation or simply hit refresh, this new item will come up for positive balance to maintain those going forward. Previously, I'd always recommended on a quarterly or monthly basis, a frequent basis, to run your customer balance summary for non-tax ledgers to see the balances that you were holding because negative balance is the only situation or negative liabilities at that time was the only situation where we would report a subledger rec item. But now we have the option to opt into a positive balance there. So if you believe that that's right for your tenant or you have additional questions on it, feel free to email us at support@rakedigital.com. But that's really sort of what we believe. And we're doing some optimization around subledger reconciliation, all of that. But the positive balance, I think, is a great addition if you're maintaining $0 balances on any non-tax ledgers there. So definitely opt into it if you have a use case for it there. So those are the two main new items that we're really excited about. I'll talk about a few smaller other changes that happen within this release, and then we will open it up for any questions or again suggestions that you guys have there that maybe there's something that you encounter on a daily basis that you'd love to be optimized, or just something, if you have a thought, hey, that would be nice to have. The people that are in it every single day, we really value your feedback there. In enhancements, there's been some optimization around the customer field wherever you're searching it. So primarily on the search ledger, search bank. Once you start typing into a customer, let's say that you're trying to research something that's clearing the bank, you're not sure what customer it's related to, but there's certain, like there's a name identified in it, meaning like you're trying to identify what customer it's related to. That's happened a good amount when I was implementing accounts. So once you start searching a customer, you'll have the option now to select all results, meaning everything that has a partial match to what you're searching will be selected, and you can search everything there. Previously, like you had to manually select all of those. It wasn't really ideal for how you're searching those. So now you have the option, and that will populate as select all results. The second that you have nothing in the search bar, it goes back to select all. The second that you start searching something, anything that's a partial match or contains the text that you're searching, you can now select all results there. So that should help in the optimization of how you're searching the customer field there. As kind of a reminder, there are generic imports. I know that there's not always a use case for those on a daily basis or a situation where you would need to use those, but we did some optimization around how we're reading the generic liability import to make it a little bit faster. A lot of you have probably not used that report before, but we are always trying to constantly make sure that our imports are optimized and don't like take longer than they should. And so again, if you feel like something's taking a little longer than it should, feel free to let us know. A lot of the times you may be encountering something like a consistent warning on a file import or something not working as you would expect. We don't necessarily know because you are the user that's encountering those warnings. So if you do have something where it's taking a little bit longer, or you want to talk about how we're reading a file, feel free to send a ticket into support@rakedigital.com, because we want to make sure that that's optimal for you. Everything on the ledger, every data that we house within Finlee, the customer, bank, liabilities, ledger, is based on those file imports. So we want to make sure that it's optimal. So you guys know, as things change, as you add new bank accounts, have to introduce new files, we kind of have to change the modification or modify how we read those files or what files you import into Finlee. But just kind of generally, the generic import file has been optimized to improve performance and reduce import times. Just as a reminder, under help and support, import file templates is where you find these generic imports. These generic imports are more for situations where there's a one-time used case for them. I keep on using that phrase today. I don't know why. It's my favorite phrase today. But if you have a situation, like let's say at quarter end, you have a new state and you have to go in and make a ton of payments outside of your tax processing system. There are things that happen like that. You know that none of the transactions are going to come over on a typical file that you import. So you have the option to use these generic templates to import data that would not otherwise be on the ledger, on the bank statement there. So all of these give you the ability to import those different types of data outside your normal files. So if you have a situation that's going to be a one-time thing, you can use these generic imports to import that data and get your reconciliation done there, because we can't always anticipate when those happen. And if it's going to be a one-time thing, let's say that there was an issue with your bank, so you had to do a new form, like you had to wire everything one day rather than sending via ACH. Crazy situation. Hope that never happens. But if you're logging all of those wires, you know that they're not going to post to the ledger and give you issues during bank reconciliation. You could use the import ledger template to import all those wires onto the ledger, expecting them to clear the bank there. So just kind of a bigger topic there, but we did some optimization around the generic liability import. Some changes, I already mentioned this one, but the negative liabilities, what was formerly known as negative liabilities, is now negative balance. there. All of your open cards on the Kanban board also got changed to that name. There was an optimization also or change around the import file type assignment, considering file extension to improve accuracy. This shouldn't actually have any impact to you all, but this gives me more flexibility during my implementations and even when you guys change files to make the name assignments a little bit more generic. Again, like that's when you drag and drop your files and assigning it to the correct file type. There should have been no impact to that. If you guys have noticed any type of impact, let us know, and then I can even be a little bit more broad in how I name those. So if you guys are constantly renaming something because we didn't have the option in implementation, which only happened a handful of times, I think, but if you guys have to constantly rename something, maybe we can reassess that at this point. So let us know if there's any issues with file type assignments when you're dragging and dropping on bank reconciliation import files there. If you guys have noticed in the last couple of days, we do have a loading screen that we introduced to the reconcile screen on bank reconciliation. And this was for a handful of instances where customers were super, super quick in closing out their bank statements. I mean, you'd have to click open up the bank statement and then hit reconcile immediately, which usually sometimes there's like statements that have $0 balances that they maintain. So you could do that pretty quickly. If you were faster than the loading screen, there was only a handful of times where it didn't get to complete the reconciliation. So now we're forcing, and it's just going to be a few seconds, but now what you'll see on this is a loading screen before we open up the statement. And when I close a balance or I'm about to close something, you'll see another loading screen to ensure that everything is loaded to that statement to properly close it. Again, only happened a handful of times, but that waiting a few seconds will ensure that everything's loaded so that everything gets postmarked or like marked correctly in that statement as cleared and everything closes out appropriately. So we introduced that just to, in those rare instances, completely eliminate where you were like super fast, faster than the system loading, closing the bank statement there. There were some bugs or general things that didn't operate in the way that we would have wanted them to. One of them I won't go too much into because beginning uncleared transactions, you guys are all pretty far in your implementation within Finlee, so it's likely that you don't have too many beginning uncleared transactions. But at the beginning, when you were implementing your account, or we were in the first couple of days of going live, it was possible that you needed to split a beginning uncleared transaction, and the system wasn't always marking that secondary split transaction as beginning uncleared, tying it back to beginning balances. We fixed that moving forward, but we would have addressed that together during implementation, but it did need to be corrected, and that's been corrected as of this release. There were sometimes the next item in the search ledger, if you guys had randomly clicked somewhere in the header there, you may have caught like a button of like clear filters outside of the button there. So if you've ever seen like all of your filters clear, something like that, and you didn't expect it to, it's probably because there was some extra space around it where you were still applying the action like clear filter, apply filter. We did fix that. So now like you can see my mouse move to like actually selecting that only when you're on the button there. So if you ever encountered it like clearing all your filters on the search ledger or search bank, that's why, and that's been corrected there. And then there was a very, very small instance of Kanban cards giving you a blank screen when opening, but that was only in situations where users had been completely deleted out of the system. And that's a very small use case as well, but we have corrected that. So we are, as I said at the beginning, always trying to address any type of bugs or enhancements that are reported for customers. We have a lot of awesome things coming in the future, so we're really excited about that. I will tell you more about it as I can. But again, just as I said at the beginning, we're always taking customer suggestions, and I'll usually talk to you about, hey, we're moving forward with it. Hey, we're not because of X, Y, and Z. So we do really take that very seriously. And because every single tenant is customized, You may be encountering some things related to how we're reading your files. So just always talk to us about kind of what you're experiencing. If there's something that can be optimized, and we're always happy to consider that. Some of you are really great at doing that, so we appreciate that. As always, and then, if it's working great for you, it's working great for you. So awesome. That was really it for today. If there's any questions in general, it can be about the release, it can be about anything else. I will hang around for a couple of minutes, but want to be respectful of your guys' time today. And we really appreciate you guys hopping on. Hope you guys like these new features, and we'll look for this webinar and releases in the future.